let's talk to our guests today. We have some esteemed people with us today. For confidentiality reasons, we're not going to talk about their companies, who they work with, but rest assured you can look them up and you'll know who they are. First, I'd like to introduce Atif Riaz. Atif, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I'm Atif Riaz. I lead the IT organization for a multi-billion-dollar oil and gas company based out of Houston, Texas.
And last but not least, we have Mo Sadat, who works with a very large service provider. Mo, tell us about you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Faruk. Thanks for having me here. So, Mo Sadat, actually it's Mohammed Sadat. I've quickly transformed into Mo here. So I do two things. One, I work with a Fortune 500 technology services provider where I'm looking at two things. One is how do I transform the companies from a digital standpoint, both from a front office standpoint, but also looking at their back office as they're transforming their technology landscape, and especially now with the whole focus around AI and AI enablement. How do we move some of those companies from where they are to the next level?
Sounds great. Well, thanks for joining us, Mo, and both of you. So let's kind of dive into the subject matter of today. And gentlemen, I get a lot of feedback from folks, that are my partners or people looking to enter from Pakistan into the U.S. marketplace. And, I thought, nothing better than reality check. People who are buyers, who are sellers, who are working in this environment. The way I'd like to kind of kick this off, starting with you, Atif. So give us kind of and we're going to go broad first just to get things set. But, what are qualities you look for in a service provider besides the technical piece, right? We know that, hey, if you don't know your stuff technically, that's table stakes. But what are you looking for there?
I think you said technical is table stakes, but a lot of times when people reach out to me, and that's about 20 to 30 different companies a day that are reaching out via email, via phone calls, trying to get our attention and trying to get to do business with us. At that point, we don't know if they even have the technical chops or not, right? So that is a big part of doing the evaluation and figuring out whether they can actually deliver. But outside of that, the big thing that we look for is how much do they care? How accountable are they? Are they willing to put some skin in the game? What is their value prop? Because if there's 20 companies reaching out every day, how do you stand out? So a lot of times that's what I'm looking for is that personal connection. Is it clear that this person cares? And then secondly, what is unique about them compared to others?
Interesting. That's good perspective. Now, based on your historical around this process, what has been successful and not?
From when somebody reaches out, I think the biggest thing, and this is basic, but the biggest thing is how easily they're able to connect in that first time that you're meeting with me, whether it's over phone call or in person. Do we form that connection very quickly? Do we have chemistry? Do I trust you? And a lot of that trust comes from what they're saying and their demeanor, and the way they're able to talk about their successes and what they've done for others. So I think if you build that trust in the very beginning, it's easier to then follow that through with a sale.
Interesting. Well, and I want to move this over to Mo for some feedback. So Mo, being in a situation where you're the one potentially connecting to an Atif, what are some techniques that you use to establish that trust and build that rapport?
Absolutely. So, Farooq, I wanted at the outset say that I've been truly impressed with the type of talent pool from Pakistan that has come in. Have had the privilege of interacting with quite a few of the talent pool, the service providers from Pakistan, and really, just within a few minutes of conversation, it's clearly it's clearly visible that that they're really cut above some of the rest of the service providers that I'm used to working with, as part of ecosystem partners. So I just wanted to make sure that I put that message across. So that's on the talent pool side. Now, to coming back to your question, to me, I think I want to double click on what Atif said, right? So for Atif, trust is important. For Atif, what I heard was putting skin in the game. And I want to just kind of give you a little bit more on some of the examples. So when Atif talks about value, right? I think this is one of the important parts that I want us to take away is, if you just sort of step back, kind of where is the CIO today, right? So CIO is in a sort of a very interesting position inside the corporate complex, right? You've got a CIO, and again, I work very closely with a lot of CIOs from the energy companies. There's sort of two big agendas on their plates as I'm thinking about it. And again, Atif, you can talk a lot more about that. So one that I see is there is how do I bridge the divide between IT and business? I think that's really important for a CIO, that he or she is coming across as someone who's truly problem solving for the business. So I think that's part one. Secondly, the CIO is also navigating within his or her organization to ensure that how do I scale the competency levels of my organization? Where are the areas that I want to really focus, deep dive on their competencies so that I can hand off some of the other things to perhaps the service provider. So those are two big ones for me. Now, where service providers can really add value there is, and this is something big for me, is, do you understand the business, right? So it's not just about, hey, give me your data and I'll come back to you with an answer, right? It's really about, okay, what is the nature of your business, right? And how, when I'm thinking about value, how much is there a cost play? Is there an efficiency play? Is there a productivity play? Or is there a real value add that's happening? So in many cases we approach our clients from the lens of, hey, this is a technology problem. No, this is a business problem that you're helping the CIO solve. So that's part one. Part two is really about the understanding that there is is really meeting them where they are, right? What I mean by that is different companies are in different places in their, I call it IT transformation journeys. So we need to understand where they are, and taking that time to understand is, I think, absolutely critical. What I mean by that, just to be specific, there was for the last couple of years, there's been a rush into moving from your SAP into this new S4 environment, right? Now, the big thing happening is around the whole AI enablement of enterprises. So it's really, I think the CIOs are caught in, okay, how do I make sure that I can deliver value from an AI standpoint, but also how do I build a foundation so that I can do this at scale? So understanding where they are in their journey, I think is critical. So those are the two things I would offer up here.
Well, thanks for that, Khurram, and that's good. And for the audience, I wanted to shed light that even though you're not the biggest player, it doesn't mean you don't think about things this way, right? And a lot of people try to boil things down to a very basic level, and unfortunately, that doesn't help you. So a little tip and trick for folks is, really think through and understand what somebody who's running maybe a $50 million budget, right? What's he going to be prioritizing and thinking about in terms of projects and what to tackle? It's all going to be about strategic and how it's going to impact his business. And the other thing I wanted to comment, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Atif, is to validate this, is that a lot of people feel like just talking to the CIO means that's it, it's done. Far from that, right? So Atif, that's my question to you now is, what's that decisioning process look like when you guys are picking vendors and stuff? And I knew you're not in a vacuum in that situation.
Yeah, I think said something very powerful there. If the reason CIOs exist, or what CIOs are trying to do today, is to serve the business, right? So if somebody's approaching us with an IT problem that they're trying to solve, or a technical problem that they're trying to solve for IT, for the CIO. Sometimes they may think, well, I'm talking to the CIO, so he will be interested in the technical stuff, the IT things, but that's not true. If a CIO is focused on that, he or she is focused on the wrong things, right? We are there to serve the business and solve business problems. So that's very critical. What Mo said there is make sure you understand the business that the CIO is serving. Make sure that you are solving a business problem for the CIO rather than a CIO problem. So that is going to be very critical as you approach the CIO to talk about.
No doubt. And in your opinion, when have you seen? So let's highlight a successful project, right? Where two scenarios. One, you were approached and you shared that with the business and it turned out successful. What are some of the top line mechanics of what happened in that situation?
Yeah, so I think step one there is when I was approached, it was with an understanding of what problem we're trying to solve versus trying to sell me the product, right? If you have a product that you're trying to sell and that's all you push, if I need it or without recognizing whether I need it or not, you're going to waste your time and the other party's time as well. So the one that comes to mind, it was a clear problem that I was trying to solve for the business. This other party understood that they were part of our ecosystem, so they saw some of the issues we were having. They approached me as an advisor, right? Rather than a seller, it was more, hey, I know this is an issue in the industry. We know you're trying to tackle this personally, and this is what we can do. So that's step one. Okay, now I'm interested. Now I'm listening to you. Then step two is, do you have a track record? Do you have something, a demo or something that you can show that is inspiring, that will convince? So generally, when I go through this process, I make the service provider give that presentation to me as if they would to anybody else, to the business. And once I'm convinced, I bring them in front of the business directly. So I don't try to be the middleman. I don't try to be be the broker in the middle, but rather have them present directly to the business, because that's what's going to garner some trust and confidence in what they're trying to do for us. So that's what's been successful is you have a product, you have an execution track record, you show that you're accountable, you're willing to put some skin in the game potentially, and that could come in different ways, and then you're able to inspire. I think a lot of people miss out on this because they have a product, they're excited about the product, but not connecting that product to a problem, then that means you don't inspire when you get in front of the business.
Very cool. No, that's great. No, I appreciate that. I was thinking before I go to the flip side, let me ask Mo, and then we'll go to the other question. So Mo, based on what Atif is sharing, tell us a little bit about some success you've had, approaching a situation like what Atif just described.
Yeah. So I'll pick it up from where Atif left off in terms of, the service provider has really gained Atif's confidence, right? That they really have not only the technical chops, but also they understand the business problem that they're solving. What I want to pick up is now Atif has basically said, look, okay, come and do a POC for me. And the service provider comes in, they do a bang-up job of doing the POC. It's clearly what Atif is looking for. Business is excited, but then nothing really happens, okay? And then that's where the frustration of the service provider starts happening. Look, I put 50, 60 grand of my own. This is something everyone was like high-fiving us, and now here we are 6 months down the road, nothing has moved. What is happening there, right? And I think this is where I want to just focus on two main things. One is, as you are trying to, and this is really for the business leaders within the service providers, is how are you understanding the enterprise architecture for that for the organization you're working for, because it's absolutely critical to understand how is this product going to scale in that environment. I think that's something that we're so focused on making sure that POC is successful that perhaps we don't think through on the scalability standpoint. So how does this really meet the cybersecurity standards, right? Because I've seen countless POCs. They've done a great job. The CFO, CIO has given the blessing, but then the CISO comes in and says, this is not going to scale in my environment. And so having that understanding of, okay, how are we making sure that, if this goes into the OT environment, how is this going to play there? Given the suite of application that already exists, how will this product play in there? So I think there's that one component. The second one to me, which is very near and dear to me, is how are you engaging with the frontline folks or the end users of this product, right? I think it's so important that those people become your evangelists, right? And then they are the ones coming to Atif and saying, look, this stuff is going to help me. I've been spending 30-40% of my time finding data, but this product just helps me do my job a lot better. So making sure that you've identified one or two of those evangelists within the business who can then be your spokespeople, I think is absolutely critical. So understanding the enterprise architecture and then really making sure that you're solving, you've got a couple of those evangelists there ready when the time for scaling comes.
Thanks, Mo. That's great. And I think you also kind of answered part of the second part of the question, but I want to ask Atif to validate that a little. So Atif, we said the second scenario was now business comes to you and saying, Atif, I gotta have this. This is the next best thing since sliced bread, right? What's your evaluation process and what helps you come to a decision to focus on that and do that?
I think that's really good advice that makes my life really hard, right? When you're being cornered from different corners of the business saying, hey, we've got to have it.
Yeah.
That is where you want to be. As a service provider, that's where you want to be. As a leader of IT, that I'm like, oh boy, now I better, first of all, this will require a lot of my focus, a lot of my attention. And I better make sure that this is the right thing for the organization. And if it's not, I have really good reasons why, right? So once you've got the business bought in, then to say no is really, really hard for any IT leader from that perspective. So step one, I would recommend that you bring in the IT and the business leaders along together at the same time in parallel. So that, one or the other isn't feeling like now I have to catch up and now I may have to say no, and it's a lot more work. So that's step one. But I think once the business is bought in, I think, like I said, it makes our life hard, but it also makes our life easier. Because if all the boxes are checked from a cybersecurity perspective, it scales. If from an infrastructure perspective, it aligns with our architecture, it's easier to say yes and then move forward with a solution. So for us, that's the next steps. When the business comes in and they say this is what we want, we start talking with the service provider. We start analyzing their solution. The first step is, again, what was the value prop, right? Who else exists? So why are we going with this service provider versus another? Generally, business is pretty clear on that if they've picked somebody. And then the next steps are then trying to figure out, for us, from a cybersecurity, that's a big deal. Is this a small organization that doesn't have the right controls internally, and where a lot of other companies are moving as well, is trying to figure out in our contracts from the very get-go, hey, who is it that we're going to be doing business with? What kind of controls do they have? What kind of cybersecurity do they practice themselves? So we only work with businesses who can prove that they're not going to accidentally leak our data. They're not going to end up leaving some code out on the internet that has embedded passwords. This has happened. right? Embedded passwords on GitHub, which is very easy to then get into our environment through that. So those are the things we're looking at that point is, do they then work with our infrastructure and our architecture from cybersecurity perspective and data, other architectures as well.
Very, very good. Thank you. Thanks for that.
Faruk, if I can just quickly
jump in
real quick. I think what Atif shared is absolute gold from a service provider standpoint, because I've talked to a number of our service providers, especially coming from Pakistan, and the intent, again, like I said, the talent is wonderful. What their sort of pitch is, hey, let us do a POC, and we'll do a POC, and they will see what kind of product it is, right? Mm-hmm. Well, this is that sort of approach that I want to challenge slightly, to say, look, make sure that it's because Atif is being approached by countless other service providers with the same value prop. Just try me out. Well, it's actually quite a bit of from an infrastructure standpoint, and for his organization, it's quite a bit of workload to get someone onboarded and even try some of these POCs. So it's not simply because think about the data connections that have to be made. Think about the communication that needs to go to the business about what this product is meant to solve. It's a lot of overhead on a CIO organization. So when you're approaching it, obviously think about the business problem. I would also coach the teams to say, look, make sure you have someone from the industry come with you to these pitch sessions or to just these initial discussions, because having that understanding that, okay, this person really understands my business is an important one. So I just thought I double click on that.
No, that's great, and it's good because it segues. You're reading my mind this morning, which is kind of good, because it was going to segue into the next question. So, as both of you know, a lot of the Pakistani service providers that we're working with and dealing with are generally smaller, right? And they tend to be, what I would call them is they're actual fixers, right? So they get in, they see a specific issue, that's what they do, either a deployment or around data analytics or a specific area of focus like RPA. And the challenge we run into, and that's the question back to Atif, is like, I'm a $2 million company, I got 150 engineers, I can fix things, I can get things done, but I can't afford SMEs, and I'm not deep enough to be a SME within this sector. So advice from you, right, as and you've seen boutiques, so how do these guys tackle that, right, in your opinion? Right, it's a cart horse problem. Right?
Yeah. I think when I was just saying, make sure you bring an industry expert. That's what I was thinking. That a lot of our audience won't have that, right? So that's not the skill set, or that's not what they bring to the table. So if there's something that you're not bringing to the table, then I guess the focus really needs to be, what is it that you bring to the table that's going to just stand out compared to everybody else? So for an organization out of Pakistan, it's for me at least, what I see and how some of these organizations have been able to come work with me is, first of all, who do you have on the US side doing your sales for you or working with you, right? This is certainly not a plug for you, Faruk, but in general, I do think this matters, right? The face that you have here that's going to go sit down with the client makes all the difference. If you don't have a face here and your only sort of sales pitch is through web, I can tell you that diminishes your chances a lot to get into an organization, because again, I have a lot of people in person who are reaching out. So that helps build trust. That gives me confidence. I know I can go to somebody and talk to them if some things go south in person. So in general, I think that matters. The second thing is going back to what can you compete on? It's your technical skill set. right? If that's the deep expertise is that what you're bringing in a certain technical area, then that's what you highlight. And the other thing is compete on cost. I think I see a lot of service providers out of Pakistan making one mistake. Even though we have an advantage on the cost side, we don't want to put that forward to the customer. So a lot of times your cost is the same as the cost from a nearshore provider or from India. And in that case, then you are competing with thousands of other service providers, right? So as soon as you actually try to capitalize on what your strengths are, which is you're operating out of a low-cost environment and you have a really highly skilled workforce working for you, you focus on that, I think you can get in.
No, that's interesting and makes a lot of sense. I was going to kind of highlight something here. So having spent a lot of time in working with these, especially the better quality firms out of Pakistan, here's a real challenge we're facing. The talent pool is X. There's a demand within that talent pool, and the wages are coming up extraordinarily fast, right? So they, I when I talk to my partners and they tell me the wage bases that they're looking at, we still have an advantage, right? I know we do. But I think the other thing that, and that's where you guys can weigh in, and Mo, maybe you can provide some insight here. What I try to explain to people, I'm like, it's an investment cycle, right? So if you're coming in and you're doing projects, you want to come in, you want to deliver the best project at the best possible price you can, do it at. Because remember the IP you're developing for yourself, right? Now you're working with these enterprise level folks, you start to understand the nuances, and it makes you more effective in terms of your next set of business and negotiation. Mo, what are your thoughts on that?
No, so certainly echo what Atif mentioned, right? I think it's really focusing on the value proposition, but also the differentiation, right? From the standpoint of what. Given the differential, the labor arbitrage, that advantage that you have, absolutely to play it. The one thing I would also add is how do you help, de-risk the effort as well. What I mean by that specifically is it's not just about, look, take my guy, a Power BI guy, or take my data science guy or data engineer and try him or her out and then tell me if that person is going to fit. To me, that's, you don't want to go once you start going into that realm, the sales cycle becomes a lot longer. Also, it becomes, you kind of box yourself into a staff org kind of a provider. And I don't know if that's your play, but I would say focus on, okay, what is the problem that you're helping the CIO solve for the business? So that's part one. The other thing which I think can be a real differentiator is around project management. This is where an advantage relative to perhaps some of our neighbors can be, right? Where they have built a lot of the technical chops, they have the scale, perhaps where they need to work a bit more on is around how do you deliver as a project. And that's something I would say, as you're thinking about your setup for the service providers out of Pakistan, think about the project management component as well. I think that's an important one that can also be a differentiator for you as well.
That's great. Well, gentlemen, we're coming up close to time. First thing, I want to thank you both for your generosity and time, especially on a weekend like this. Obviously for our audience, the premise here, folks, is to help you understand better how we operate in this market and help you improve your chances of doing something here. So with that, I want to thank everybody for watching today. And gentlemen, you have a great rest of your weekend. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.